Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
150 members voting to block a motion to vacate House Speaker Mike Johnson. The attempt to oust the speaker came from Georgia Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene, who believes Johnson has failed to push a conservative agenda.
Well, there you go. Marjorie Taylor Greene played the motion to vacate card. And as we open up on this Wake Up Mid-Missouri Thursday morning, clear again, we'll be talking about the stormy weather, which didn't unfold as badly as we thought here in mid-Missouri. The stormy weather that didn't unfold in Mike Johnson's House Speaker office because of the vote that followed, which means he's still the Speaker, and the absolute calm down in Jefferson City with 2 days to go in the budget. It's unbelievable. Welcome into the program.
You've been watching the right states local news, Randy. You're not looking at like Minnesota or anything, right?
But nothing's happening. We got 2 days in budget to go. Nothing's happening. No move.
Not out in the open. We should note that only 11 Republicans voted nay on Marjorie Taylor Greene's. Were with Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday. One of those being Missouri's
Eric Burleson.
Yep.
And I thought that was quite interesting. I mean, there's still a small contingent of people who want to try to, gum up the works. That seems to be the story down in Jefferson City, doesn't it, Stephanie?
I think yesterday I just tweeted, I'm disappointed. And I think,
which hurts. You hear that.
That sounds like a dad thing, doesn't it, John? I'm so disappointed in you.
Disappointed.
I am. And, I think... you can start pointing fingers and blaming, but right now it just feels like quit pointing fingers and just get the work done. And it seems like, at first I thought one side was at fault, and I'm getting more and more frustrated with all of the sides, I think. And it sounds like what's happening now is there is some tension between the House and the Senate. Obviously, you would normally spend this week hammering out the differences between the House and the Senate. Because of the delay, there's not the time to do that. But even when they do that, it would be like in conference, or there'd be a little bit of discussion on the floor. It sounds like they're hammering things out behind closed doors. And
doesn't it?
That's exactly what they're doing. And I'm not naive. That happens every year, right? That's part of the process. But because now we have less than 48 hours, the discussions that you would normally have in open session on the floor, where transparently, where people could kind of hear, which some of that, are we? And again, not naive. A lot of people use the floor for just campaign speeches, so maybe we're cutting that off. I don't know.
This year especially.
But I do feel like we're doing a little bit of damage to the institution, and that for me is hurtful. And people laugh when I like to try to quote this, and I'm probably going to get it wrong. But having spent many, many hours in that chamber, I think the line on the wall says something like, "Let free and fair discussion ever be the firmest friend of truth," right? And I think there's a lot to be said for, and I think there's a reason why that's on the wall. And I think debate is healthy. And that's not to say that I'm in favor of filibusters, because I think reading books is not
debate.
Yeah, it's not debate. So I am disappointed that we're not getting more discussion out in the open on the budget. And I don't know
we're hearing positive things, though.
But
I think Cody Smith on the House side, we're hearing positive things from him. And Lincoln Huff, the approach chairman in the Senate, him too. So it sounds like they're, like you said, smoky back rooms, but it sounds like they're going to get things sorted out.
I didn't necessarily say smoky back rooms, but yes. Isn't smoking illegal still?
Yeah, you can't smoke in there
banned
anymore.
in the Capitol. All right, but
what
I do
kind
think,
of smoke in the back rooms?
Well, that's true. The now the question, I think, is what does happen, in the next 48 hours. I think, if the House and the Senate have reached a conclusion, then maybe something pretty quickly could happen. If they don't meet the budgetary deadline, my understanding is, there's still a little bit of time before the end of the fiscal year, but essentially it'd be kind of like the federal government, at the end of the fiscal year, if there's no budget. I don't know that we really get a government shutdown, but essentially they would have to come into special session pretty quickly to try to get that budget across
When's the
line.
fiscal year? July or
June?
June?
It's June, right,
Yeah,
June 30?
Correct.
So,
July 1?
So they have to get something in place, right? Or I guess.
The
Pretty
last
quickly.
time they did this back in the 90s, they literally came back the next day after session ended to do the budget.
Which is weird because typically when we do a special session, it's well into the fall,
Yeah.
right? It's
Month
like
down.
with the
Well,
veto
they're
session.
talking June on this one.
Oh, yeah, they'd have to.
You talked about the threat to the institution and the erosion of respect for the institution. That's one component, no doubt. I think what's more concerning, maybe to our family here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, and I don't mean just here sitting behind microphones, but I think folks listening might be as or more worried about the damage to the conservative movement. I mean, you talk about a squandered opportunity, and
At the federal level or the state level, Randy?
yes,
Yeah, good.
but it's the same, right? It's parallel, and at the same time, the Democrats that do have a strong issue. I sorry to say, it's that abortion issue, and then you've got a dysfunctional, disunified opposition. It doesn't bode well for the November elections. And
I think for a lot of the Wake Up Mid-Missouri family out there, Randy, a lot of it is, especially on the state levels, they say, hey, you guys are messing around and misusing our hard-earned tax dollars for a lot of folks. And that translates right into what we'll see in November.
yeah, right. And okay, but that said, Donald J. Trump made one of the most high-quality leadership statements.
About a woman, no less.
Well, speaking about the national level and about what I'm just referencing here, here's what he said on Truth Social yesterday. I absolutely love MTG. She's got spirit, she's got fight, and I believe she'll be around and on our side for a long time to come. However, right now,
There's always a
Republicans
but.
have to be fighting the radical left Democrats and all the damage in capital D they have done to our country. With a majority of 1, shortly growing to 3 or 4, we're not in a position of voting on a motion to vacate. At some point, we may very well be, but this is not it. We are leading in the presidential polls, both nationally and swing states. Likewise, we're doing well in the Senate. I believe we'll do well in the House. But if we show disunity, which will be portrayed as chaos, disunity and chaos, all in capitals, it will negatively affect everything. Mike Johnson is a good man who is trying very hard. I also wish certain things were done over the last period of 2 months, but we will get them done together. It is my request that Republicans vote for the motion to table. We will win big, and it will be soon. What a powerful leadership statement saying unity, not chaos.
Because he knows he needs that for November.
But you know
But
what?
it is very powerful.
I challenge every legislator listening to this, and I challenge everyone in the audience to call the legislative office today.
Don't do that. They're busy.
Call your legislative office today.
Send them an email.
Call someone.
Tell them if you don't see unity, if you don't see anti-chaos, if you don't see pro-conservative movement, you're voting all the bums out. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean it in a colloquial way. Enough. Enough of the fighting, enough of the bickering. We have conservative issues to accomplish. We need to get them done.
I don't know that I'm calling for unity necessarily. I'm just calling for, getting work done.
Get the
like
work.
respecting the institution, like following
But the work doesn't mean more government, more taxes, more programs, more handouts, more gimme, more tax credits. Here.
We've run out of time to really dig deep into that. Brian, have you ever, when would we normally start the conference on the budget?
Oh, in a normal situation, you would have had a conference going by now, and you just don't see as many conference committees as you used to. I'm gonna also make a point here. I'm curious to see how the media, I don't know the budget, whether or not it gets done tomorrow, and I'm not optimistic. I don't know. It's just, we'll see what happens. But this is, the Constitution requires the legislature to pass a balanced budget by tomorrow. That's a fact. However, we have history here, and John will remember this. John and I are probably the two guys left in the market that will remember it. In 1997, the legislature, and it was the Democrats who had supermajorities, They're infighting. They did not get the budget done. Governor Carnahan called a special session, and guess what the issue that divided them? Abortion. Almost the same as today. And remember, and some of the Democrats didn't want Jay Nixon. If you remember, John, representing them, they had to hire a guy named Jordan Cherick. My point being that, it's not the end of the world if they don't pass the budget. It's embarrassing because they'll have to call a special session. But if that happens, well, I'm not so sure that we're going to get it done.
Look, there's a report this morning that Steward Healthcare, it actually was yesterday, one of the largest private healthcare companies in the country, has declared bankruptcy. We are seeing in Europe, with massive immigration, massive welfare, by the way, other healthcare concerns in these United States, which includes healthcare concerns in this state, are going to go bankrupt because of uncompensated care. And we can't, as conservatives, say we have got to have some fiscal responsibility. The taxpayers cannot keep taking on the burden of giveaway to people who don't want to work because the welfare rolls expand, the government keeps growing, we keep handing out stuff to people. Where are our conservative principles? And when it comes to budget, why doesn't the large supermajority say, you know what, we're going to do in a conservative, responsible way to save the future for our children and our health care and our roads and everything else. We're going to do what government needs to do, not what government doesn't need to do, because we have control. We're not going to be reckless like the Democrats with something called Obamacare.
Randy,
how's that working out for you?
Randy, you're forgetting one very important thing here about the budget
Holy
that
cow.
ties in. This is a very important fact. The voters of this state, in about 8 counties of them, voted to approve Medicaid expansion.
Right.
Let's say 8 to 10 counties, the 100-plus count, 106, I think, counties voted.
You make my point. Who's in control?
But they didn't have a funding mechanism. It went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court 7-0 voted that they have to implement it, and they did implement Medicaid expansion. The Medicaid program, it was court-ordered. They had to do it, and that is taking up a huge amount of the budget, and they really, unless they want to get themselves tied up in court, they really have to. That program is huge. It's the biggest part of the budget right now.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, let's just call it what it is. Let's have how many so-called GOP legislators that like to go to Boone County Lincoln Days, go to every other Lincoln Days, and wear their conservative. Just admit it. You're not conservative.
That's not it at all.
Look at education reform. We dump all kinds of money on a dysfunctional public school system, and we don't have vouchers to give school choice when our kids can't perform at a proficiency level that's going to give them success. That's the time for the daily DC rundown. What's he talking about?
And this is Stephanie, last name here for your daily DC rundown. He's reading right off of the prompter. He was supposed to put in that person's last name because it's somebody who's known to him, and rather he just read the stuff you're not supposed to read. That's twice in, I think, about 2 weeks. He's just a
Pause.
gap machine. Pause. Yeah, pause. So he's really struggling, and I think we're really seeing, I mean, he was already going downhill, but these latest ones are getting, I think, worse. We saw this really early on, and then they kind of fixed it, and then now we're back here. So I'm nervous. I'm also wondering, like, is this his handlers trying to make him go down before the convention, because somehow they had fixed this in the middle of the presidency and now it's back. So are they looking to put in somebody like Newsom or somebody else and are purposefully making him look stupid?
How does that work?
Whoever's writing the script.
I
right?
know, but how do they put someone in now? It's everyone's
I don't
pro
know.
Biden.
People say that you can do it. I don't know their rules.
That'll be a heck of a convention.
All right. So yesterday we talked about this a little bit already, but Marjorie Taylor Greene had been negotiating with Mike Johnson for some time. They had, I think, met for like 2 hours on Monday, had been meeting since then. She wanted some concessions. Ultimately, those talks broke down. There was a vote yesterday, and Marjorie Taylor Greene went down big time. 11 Republicans, only 11 Republicans joined her, one of those being Missouri's own Eric Burleson. But it seems like Johnson is going to survive that, at least for now. Although still there's a lot of, criticism of him. But I think people are just, I think, Randy, as you said earlier, just tired of the chaos.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're going for now. Right now, we are seeing discussions and negotiations still continue. I guess negotiators from Israel and Hamas were meeting in Cairo yesterday, trying to figure out the ceasefire issue. There were 2 proposals on the table. Neither side was willing to bend, but they are at least still in talks over that. Of course, House Republicans are really fired up, as they should be, when the Biden administration paused the shipment to Israel of 3,000 bombs. So Biden is still catching a lot of flack for that. At the same time, Randy, yesterday you asked me about what's up with Fani Willis. And I think a lot of people are Stormy Daniels has overtaken Fani Willis in the news here lately. But a Georgia appeals court has said they are going to review the lower court's decision not to disqualify Fani Willis. And so that will go up on appeal. And then today, the storm continues, not here in mid-Missouri, but there in New York. Stormy Daniels will be back on the stand. I wonder, I think the most interesting conversation that's going to happen, I think, is what happens before she goes on the stand. I guess the judge got on to Trump about, he was kind of muttering and uttering some words while she was on the stand. And of course, I think when his folks moved for the mistrial, he said, of course, I think that, there was some stuff that I wish had gone unsaid, I think is exactly what the judge had said. There were some things I wish that weren't said. And so I wonder if there is a discussion about what should remain unsaid this morning before she goes on the stand, and whether we'll see a renewed motion for mistrial at the conclusion of her testimony. I suspect we would.
The judge sort of rebuked the defense for not objecting more, but I've heard some analysts say, you don't because there's some wrangling and rambling and talking about unionizing a Missouri auto plant.
Yeah, right in Troy, Missouri.
No. Wow, just north of St. Louis. And as far as I know, that's a pretty momentous step because it involves an automaker that I know down south isn't unionized, right? So very interesting. We'll talk with him about that. He's with the American Workforce, the Institute for the American Workforce. And then later on, many of you are either minority business owners or want to be a minority business owner. And I guess we could include women and, other minorities in that. I don't know that women are a minority anymore, but I mean, still considered in that bucket. And Patrice Onwuka with the Independent Women's Forum is going to talk with us later on at about 8:08 about the impact of the Biden economy on small business, but in particular in upstart, ethnic and minority businesses. It's a big deal. It's very, very difficult to survive in a favorable small business environment, much less, that. You're in a small business, Stephanie. It's difficult in good times, much less bad times.
Yeah, well, and especially when the government's picking winners and losers.
Yeah.
I think Governor Kathy Hochul yesterday announced that she was going to award these airport contracts, but you were only eligible if you were a woman and a minority. And I'm thinking, why don't we just go back again to the free market and fair competition?
Yeah. But it's tough for everyone right now.
It is.
But Patrice will be with us then. Well, so Holocaust Remembrance Day was yesterday, and Biden is trying to play both sides of the fence. And here's what he told CNN the other day as far as supporting as Israel is trying to eliminate the scourge of Hamas and for once and for all, free the Palestinian people from they're bonded. It's a Stockholm syndrome with Hamas and the Palestinians. I think most rank and file Palestinians don't want any part of what's going on and the warfare and the carnage that comes out of Hamas's terrorism. But on the same hand, they're told a bunch of rhetoric. And from a domestic political standpoint, Biden's trying to preserve votes in the all-important swing state of Michigan, where there's a large contingent that wants to see Israel out of the Gaza Strip. So it's a mess. So on the one hand, all the Democrats and Biden gave a speech about Holocaust Remembrance Day, and then he says this about supporting Israel as they try to go the final leg of their mission to rout out Hamas.
But I've made it clear to Bibi and the War Cabinet, they're not going to get our support if, in fact, they go in these population centers.
Well, Rafah is a small population center. Yes, it's strategically important. But, I mean, this guy just, man, what poor leadership. And you think about the peace that we had with Donald Trump in office. As unorthodox his style was, it was an effective style. Because
people were afraid of him.
Well, yeah. I mean, you never knew what he was going to do.
The bad guys were.
And John, I've not been in the military. You have. But everyone I know in the military is to be successful, I mean, you don't telegraph what you're going to do, right? You keep them off guard. You keep the cards close to the vest.
Yeah, well, for some of us out there who've watched this, kind of takes back to the folks who can remember it, the Israelis in the Yom Kippur War of the 70s, where Henry Kissinger did the same kind of thing and delayed arms shipments to the IDF in the very early days of that conflict. Mm-hmm. And then the Syrians, drove their tank battalions to the Golan Heights overlooking the Jordan River. And the Israelis, I think Moshe Dayan was the defense minister and said, maybe it's time for the destruction of the Third Temple, meaning Israel and their nukes. And then the Russians threatened to get involved and nuke Israel in the Middle East and all. And the U.S. military ended up going to DEFCON 3 before the Syrians saw the handwriting on the wall and stopped and didn't proceed any further. But kind of a parallel there about the down-the-road consequences of withholding weapons from the Israelis.
Yeah. And, when you have an ally that is really the only close to democratic state we have. I mean, there's more of a democratic socialist system, but democratic in a small d kind of a way. And you need to have some presence in the Middle East, don't you? I mean, from a national security standpoint, why wouldn't you want to support them when how long has this gone on with the terrorist raids? I mean, we saw what happened October 7th, but I mean, that's gone on in a smaller way, in incidents for decades.
Well, you can go back to the days before Israeli independence and the terrorist raids. And, in deference to that, Menachem Begin, went on to be prime minister of Israel. I mean, they used some of the same tactics leading up to Israeli independence as the guys on the other side have done ever since. So you think about Black September and the Palestinian Liberation Front and the attack on the athletes in Munich and all. So it's nothing new under the sun.
No, you're right. However, you have, I think, a more nuclear. You talked about the almost went nuclear, that the Israel war in the 70s, Yom Kippur almost went nuclear. Well, now you have a nuclear Iran. I heard the other day someone reported that they think they can now. They have enriched enough uranium to tip a warhead. Tip a missile with a nuclear warhead. And whether or not it's true, I mean, I don't know whether they have the way, John, but I think given the right circumstances, they might have the will.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, man. I'm telling
it's scary.
It is crazy. It is crazy. Should we talk about child labor and what Cherie had to say?
Sure.
This is
I
very
grew up
interesting.
with two parents with small businesses, so I think I started working when I was 4. Right.
So they were debating on the floor the other day, right? Rescinding the need for the school to issue a work permit for young workers, right?
Yeah. Right now, I think if you're 14 or 15 and you want to work, you have to get all, the government gets in your business and you got to get a permit and you got to talk to your school and you got to get your parents involved. And our own Cherie Reich is catching some heat over some comments by the left, over some comments that she had on the floor. And I mean, I kind of agree with her, Randy.
She tells her own story.
Yeah.
It's a longer clip, but in the speech, she talks about her own story, how she worked and got A's and did extra credit. And she was talking about the work ethic and how I think we've all had worked. Well, Hannah, you worked at a young age, right?
Yeah, I think I had just turned 17.
John?
Oh, yeah. I worked for my father after school.
I worked in the music business, both on stage and in a music store when I was 14, 15. And we swept floors and we laid carpet. I mean, all of us can tell our stories. And if you didn't do that, maybe you mowed lawns and you did things. Well,
I labeled envelopes back when you had to send out like 500 pieces of mail. If you need to label or like stuff or, send out mailings, I'm your girl.
You did it manually, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so
been there, done that.
So here's just a little bit of Cherie. She got worked up on this speech, and I think it really was a passionate plea for perhaps a lot of kids, I think, learn their discipline through sports activities or being in the band or, being in an organized environment where you learn discipline and respecting authority and teamwork and all these great values. But I think the workplace is another one with a distinctive set of values that is missing and lost on a lot of children. And Cherie said this.
My high school counselor came to me and said, Cherie, you're bored. You got enough credits. Graduate early. I graduated early out of high school, went to work full-time, working full-time while going to school. It is good for these kids. And you know what these kids of today are? Majority of them are lazy. They don't know what work ethic is, but they know how to play video games all night. They know how to join gangs. They know how to get into trouble. Get a job and be responsible. Vote yes.
Okay.
Let's go.
Go, Cherie.
Go. I don't know who was more fired up, Randy at 6 o'clock this morning or Cherie.
And get off my lawn.
Yeah.
Well, it continues to circle back. Are we creating at so many levels, you need to ask yourself the question, has the state, even if you think the state, and by that I mean legislators, regulators, bureaucrats, in a good faith effort to try to support people, I love that word, support people. The other word that legislators like to use in politics, invest. We're going to invest in business. We're going to invest in this. Support, invest. Is it good for people to learn what it is to gut it out, fail, pick yourself up by your bootstraps because no one else going to do it? I mean, I can tell you, you talk about Medicaid expansion. the bar for people having their children, who maybe they should be supporting, young teens that are pregnant and others, on Medicaid to get obstetric services from the taxpayer, the bar is very low. I have known a lot of people, I'm going to ruffle some feathers here. I've known a lot of people that claim to be Republicans, conservatives, business owners, successful people whose children are on Medicaid when they're having babies because they can. We need to all ask ourselves, hey, and by the way, Hannah, whether it's your loan forgiveness or whether it's someone whose child can get on Medicaid and you don't have to help support them with a little maybe parental discipline and rebuking that comes with that support, maybe we need to say, look, if the program's there, okay, I'll take advantage of it. But by golly, I'm going to tell my legislator it's got to stop because we can't afford it anymore. We can't continue to have a nanny state, and we're developing it here in Missouri. Oh, the school who can't teach my kid to read and write is going to give them, we're going to vest in them whether or not a kid can work or not. Maybe a kid should work. Maybe that's where that kid should be, is learning a vocation, working for the plumber, working for the farmer, working for the drywall installer. We've got to rethink this. People are no longer responsible for their behavior. It's all, the state's going to take care of me. The state's going to protect me.
But sometimes, too, like people in your generation enable it. And I've seen that as well. So I would not.
Absolutely right.
I would not blame the entire young generation. But I've seen, grandparents and older folks who have kids who are taking state assistance. And then grandma and grandpa are buying, all the completely supporting them to live a really fancy lifestyle.
Yep.
When I'm like, why isn't grandma and grandpa helping them pay their bills so we're not footing the bill, and yet they get to enjoy all of the same things that someone else does that actually is working and supporting themselves. And so I feel like
You're right.
just blaming the younger generation,
No.
I feel like the rest of us enable it, but the government incentivizes that behavior as well.
Well, and I sorry to butt in here, I'm like about to jump out of my chair.
Hannah Budinsky, the producer, here she is.
I have to roll my eyes anytime we hear one of these kids these days comments, because every generation craps on the generation that comes after it, right? Brad Trinago, former family member on the radio station, told me once that there are quotes from ancient Greek philosophers talking about the next generation of kids, right? So it's a fact of life. And I think you guys are kind of towing around the point that I'm maybe going to make and might also ruffle some feathers. Mm-hmm. Kids are a product of their upbringing. So if you really think that kids these days are that bad, maybe you should do some self-reflection.
Ooh, hot take, Hannah.
Hot take.
No.
And it's harsh, but
valid.
You can't solely blame kids for being that way if that's how they were raised.
So I guess I've made a major communication gaffe. Won't be the first. It's not the first. You make my point.
Yeah.
Adults in the room, including legislators, need to start telling people. I told a couple of people the other night at the Vitae Foundation dinner, I said, the problem with our healthcare system is no one's got skin in the game. Everyone, you can do what you want to yourself. You can live whatever mercury poisoning and thought that the MMR vaccine causes autism, been widely disproven. In an interview recently, he told the host that in 2010 he had cognitive difficulties, memory problems. There was a spot on his brain, and it turned out there was a worm ate some of his brain away.
You're talking about RFK,
Did
right?
I say JFK? RFK. RFK
Yeah.
Jr. RFK Jr. And he called it a tapeworm, the larva of a pork tapeworm. I think of trichinosis as being which is a roundworm. And he did a lot of travel, when he was doing his ecological work and so forth.
Yeah, how do you get that?
Well, it's easily transmitted by eating raw or undercooked meats. It's really endemic in a lot of these third world countries, and he was a lot of those places in South Asia and I think Africa and maybe South America as well.
Can it be deadly?
Yeah, well, what happens is it's not. I think he probably exaggerated what really happened. What happens is, it can be deadly because it can. I mean, the cysts. What happens is you eat the worm, or you get the eggs of the worm because they can be under people's fingernails, and then they prepare the food, or it can be and it's in the food. You eat and so then the eggs hatch in your intestine.
Currently eating.
Yeah,
breakfast.
enjoy your Jimmy Dean pork sausage this morning, and and then they hatch. And then the larva can migrate and get various organs, and you can find their way into the brain. But you can get cysts in the brain, and that's what he apparently had, was a cyst. And the problem is, what I don't understand is, the worm can do some mechanical damage. The larvae are small, but more than that, it's basically the parasitic worms and the cysts create inflammation and create problems with brain tissue. So they can be fatal, though. These things can be bad. So I don't know how he was treated, what they did. They didn't describe that he had brain surgery. But at any rate, I guess it's an argument to make sure you cook your pork well, especially if it's raw pork off the farm. It's
But now
not been Those.
Good. Hey, thanks for having me on.
So I think a lot of us, when we think about some of the foreign car manufacturers, we're going to be vacationing in the little southeast here over the weekend with my family and driving down towards Tennessee Way. And normally, we pass a lot of these non-unionized plants that have invigorated often, rural or ex-urban communities. And we hear a lot about that. It seems like in Troy, they're wanting to go the other direction. Tell us about it.
Sure. So the UAW has claimed that they've got, this is back in late March, they said they had about 30% of the employees sign cards for the UAW. And, this is what the UAW is trying to do. They want to make sure that employees don't hear both sides of the story on unionization. The preferred method to organize them is a thing called card check, which takes away the privacy of a secret ballot vote. Can lead to everything from intimidation and coercion on one side to the union being able to promise employees the moon on the other, and having a gag order to prevent the employer from talking to those employees through what's known as a neutrality agreement. So the union is trying to keep employees in the dark. They want to take away their right to vote by secret ballot, and they want to put a gag order on employers.
And we know they're targeting specific plants. In this case, they're targeting this plant in Troy. Do we know why they're targeting this specific plant in Missouri?
Well, you have to go back about, 10, 15 years. And there's a, telling quote from the former president of the UAW, Bob King. And what he said was, if we don't organize these transnationals, I really don't see a future for the UAW. And that's really what this is all about. It's about expanding the UAW base, their membership base, their dues base. And, frankly, I think it's, more about the UAW than it is about workers.
Well, and we know what they spend those dues on, right? I mean, they spend it politically against us.
That's right. And, there's no better example than, Sean Fain, the current president of the UAW's current statements, siding with, the campus occupiers and protesters that are, siding with Hamas and against Israel, and him saying, no, the campus shouldn't have been cleared out. They shouldn't have been arrested. And, we've seen statement after statement. If you're just talking about the Gaza and Hamas conflict from the UAW, supporting that side over Israel, and, that even happened from a UAW, actually was at Columbia, grad student local, before Israel even attacked or retaliated against Hamas for the atrocious attacks last October.
We're talking with Vinny Vernuccio. Can I call you Vinny? I see that up on your eye.
I've been down to Missouri a lot. You got some great lawmakers there. Used to work with Senator Onder a lot. And,
there you go.
Please feel free. You have a lot of good folks down there.
We do. Well, and you're president of I4AW.org. That's Institute for the American Worker. That's the number 4AW.org. Everyone wants a friend named Vinny. I like that. We got a new friend here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Now, Vinny, I got to ask you this. I mean, to follow up on what Stephanie is saying, I mean, the UAW and the union leaders, and it's not just them, I think it grows pretty much across all the union, movement, they are supporting the politicians that support the globalist causes that export the very jobs they claim to support, don't they? I mean, how ironic is that?
It was, you saw the UAW president, Sean Fain, once again, in the, it was the First Lady's box at the State of the Union, got a shout out from President Biden. They are definitely one-sided when it comes to their politics and, their membership. Typically you see union households in general, about 40%, a third to 40% vote Republican, but, 90+% the union giving usually goes to Democrats. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I am saying that, it is not representative of the membership.
Now, what's the union using? I mean, to say to the workers like that that they should do this. I'm looking at the data from the Toyota plant here in Missouri, and I know one thing they're saying is, well, we're going to increase wages. From what I see, it's $21 an hour for production team members, starting salary $32 per hour for skill. I mean, that seems like a pretty good wage to me. What
Probably
else?
good bennies on top of that.
Yeah. What else are they using to say that the union would benefit the workers?
Well, I mean, what they're doing is, they're saying, well, look what we've got, and, that some of the high cost of living states, look what we've got against the big three. That is definitely a difference between, what's going on in Troy and then some of the other states where the union represents workers. But they do leave out, and this is where it really is so important that workers get all sides of the story. I'm not saying vote one way or the other, but the main thing that we want to make sure is that workers are informed. So while they're talking about these wages, they're not talking about, the scores of announced layoffs that have happened since the contract was ratified with the big three. They're not talking about some of the areas where they've expanded, where those companies are now saying, well, maybe we're not going to expand operations like we were planning. So, the bottom line is we just want to make sure that workers are getting all sides of the story. It really does come down to these neutrality agreements, these card check agreements, the UAW trying to make it so that employees are not given full information.
Vince, we appreciate you joining us live. Just a quick note about Troy and Lincoln County for some background for listeners that don't know. When the Right to Work bill was on the ballot back in 2018, and I followed this very closely at the Capitol, Lincoln County's state representative, Randy Peitzman, a Republican, voted for year after year right to work, and he constantly was reelected up until he was termed out. He supported right to work, and the voters in that county sent him back to Jeff City and over again. Those same voters voted overwhelmingly against right to work when it was on the ballot in 2018. So very interesting. They were sending a guy that was for right to work to Jefferson City, but they voted against it. So maybe there's some independence there. We'll find out. What's your gut feeling, though, about this particular plant, in the Toyota plant, which basically makes engines in Troy? What do you see happening there?
What my hope is, once again, is that workers are getting all sides of the story. They can make an informed decision, that, the workers are being talked to. And, that was the big difference of what happened in Chattanooga with Volkswagen. Is Volkswagen was neutral. They were not talking to employees. They were not communicating, basically what the other side of the story was. And that is something that, from the Biden administration to Democrats in Congress, UAW is consistently pushing, is they want to keep employees in the dark. So my hope is that employees just get all sides of the story so they can make an informed decision, and not just make an informed decision, make an informed decision in the privacy of a voting booth, say, yes, this union is good for me, or no, it's not. I don't want to bring this union in that could last not just through the rest of my career, but my children's career, my grandchildren's career, because once a union's in, it is extremely hard to get them out.
That's Vincent Vernuccio. He's the president of the Institute for the American Worker at i4aw.org. Joining us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
Vince, to play devil's advocate, and this comes from a guy who was a young guy who was a union apprentice and had a good experience with it as a young guy. The former ABB transformer plant here in Jefferson City, which is now Hitachi Energy, is a UAW affiliate. It's a UAW shop. You talk to the people out there, all in all, vast majority of them have had good responses with the union. I guess to the folks in Troy, where are the cautions based there? I know union dues are not cheap, and especially in this modern era, but what would you say to a potential employee at that Troy plant?
I would say just get all the information, and that's really what the heart of this is. Make sure that you are making an informed decision, that the union is not doing any pressure tactics, not doing they're not forcing one of these card check selection processes. And thankfully that did not happen in Chattanooga, but that is something that is the UAW hallmark, and they are typically, that is their first line of attack, is saying, no, we don't want to vote. We want to just be recognized. We don't want workers to get all the information. And, my message is, just be informed. Look into the UAW stances. Look into, their politics. Do you agree with that? And make an informed decision. And, that's the most important thing.
All right. Well, Vincent, we appreciate you being with us, and thanks for bringing some light to this. I think this was something that had been underneath our radar, and we hope that now folks who are concerned, maybe directly, maybe indirectly active in this or interested, can become active. Learn more at i4aw.org. Thanks, Vinny. Appreciate it. Have a great one.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Interesting.
I grew up in probably the most heavily union part of the state of Missouri, Florissant, Missouri, if anybody's ever been there. 1980. You want to talk about power of labor now?
You grew up in a union family,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Dad, a fourth-generation bricklayer. Bricklayer's local number one. And I will tell you this, the point I'm making is in that very union area, I saw union households all over Florissant with Ronald Reagan signs in their yard. They weren't union bosses. Right. They were union workers. Granted, I did also see quite a few Walter Mondale, Jimmy Carter signs, but the gentleman is correct in that, the assumption is all union people vote for Democrats. The union bosses do. Right. But union members, and I don't know what the status is today, but a lot of them in those days definitely supported Reagan.
We saw an example of that very recently. It was last week, I believe, when Donald Trump, on his way to court,
he went to the fire department.
I guess it was week before, and the steel workers.
Yes.
He went and visited the steel workers, and their local president said, my guys are behind Trump. I don't care what the national union says. My guys, the rank and file, we took a poll and they're behind Trump. So it's fascinating, how this plays. There really is. I think we'll all agree. There was a time in these United States when sweatshops, abuse of labor, there were no laws codified to protect labor and safety standards. Now all that stuff's been codified for the most part, and so that's now I think less of an arrow in the union quiver.
I think you're right. And I think also, knowing where that money goes, I think is so important. And I know, even in Missouri, we've had that conversation as lawyers, and they've had that around the country in that we have to pay the bar dues every year. And some of that money is, guess what, spent on lobbying and government relations, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. And so knowing that I have this forced payment to support things that maybe I wouldn't want to support has been troublesome for me, and in other states has been challenged.
Can we all agree, though, that when we walk into the room and we're on the anti-union side and all the suits on the union side are on the other side of the table, I want a guy in a pinstripe suit named Vinny Vernuccio on my side. Hey, I'm here with Vinny. You want to talk unions? We'll talk unions.
What's the old line? The union, the guys who brought you the 5-day work week.
We'll come back with What's Hot with Hannah in just a minute.
Say.
Yeah, I saw it on the Chiron, but it was fleeting. So what's the story?
So Miss USA announced on Monday of this week that she was going to be like relinquishing her title, I guess, which means that they go to the second runner-up from the pageant.
Is that the 23 Miss USA?
Yes.
Last year. Okay.
Yeah.
So the reigning queen.
Yes. So she's stepping down.
Okay.
And now, just 3 days later, this news came out yesterday, Miss Teen USA is now announcing that she's stepping down. Again, the 2023 Miss Teen USA. Now, Miss USA cited some mental health woes, and that was her reason for stepping down. Miss Teen USA is saying that her values no longer align with the Miss USA organization.
Are there some details there?
I don't have any. I thought it'd be more fun to speculate.
Let's make it up as we go.
Yeah, I mean, that's all What's Hot with Hannah is anyways,
So
right?
what do we know about the values of the organization? Is it more woke and she's not woke, or vice versa? Are they not woke?
Well, and she's not spilling any details on what specific values or morals are not in alignment.
Does she have any archived social media that would give us a clue? I wonder.
We'll have to do some digging. This just came out yesterday, so
Isn't that interesting?
The TikTok sleuths haven't quite unveiled everything I need them to just
Are those
yet.
separate organizations, or are they related? Probably separate, huh?
Well, I mean, they're all a part of the Miss USA
they are.
system.
I didn't know there was a system. I thought, there was different, companies, but it's all sort of under a big umbrella.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
The Miss USA social media director has also resigned, and she's been blabbing on socials, apparently.
Oh, I need to go follow her.
Got some juiciness?
She said, I disavow workplace toxicity and bullying of any kind.
Disavow?
Yeah. So they're not sure that that's exactly related, but apparently there is some workplace issues. Toxicity.
Speaking of that, did you see this report in the Wall Street Journal? Sexual misdeeds, bullying found at the FDIC.
Are you surprised?
They say the 71-year-old leader there, not good for old white guys, that's been there since 2005, allowed, superiors to sleep with subordinates, brothels, the whole day. I mean, it was out of control, and he had anger management problems and stuff.
Now, hang on. You gave me just a little bit of flack yesterday for using the term old white guys.
Well, no, I just say, because it's true. I said it's not good. This guy's 71 years old, and he's been there forever.
Well, and they're the folks that are
I can't help myself get excited over the blue skies. Blue skies. Yeah-da-da-da. It's a beautiful day. We got to be thankful for the weather. Aren't you happier when the weather's like this? And don't you get down when it's cloudy and stormy weather?
I don't know about you, but I'm still going to work all day, so I'm going to sit inside and type in front of a computer. Usually that makes me cranky.
But you can go outside, take a little breather, enjoy the beautiful air, the beautiful sunlight. How blessed we are to have a beautiful day. And how blessed people will be that have medical debt if Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna get their way. First, it was Hannah, well, not quite yet, but Hannah's student loan debt. And now Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna have revealed a bill to cancel all medical debt. I told you this was going to be coming. First, it's student loan debt. Bernie and Ro want to cancel all medical debt.
There's a slight distinction here, though.
Credit card debt will be next. You watch my words.
I mean, credit card debt's closer to student loan debt than it is medical debt. I do feel
it's all debt.
Yeah, but for student loan debt, like, you choose to go to university. You choose which university. You can choose not to go to university. For a lot of folks who have medical debt, like, it's like bad karma, or like it just completely it's random. I would say for other people who don't go get regular checkups and take care of themselves, they can get into medical debt that they could have avoided. But I do know that some people have been saddled with a lot of medical debt, and there was really nothing they could have done otherwise. And that's not great. But I would say we could handle this. A lot of times you see people do like GoFundMes and other things, and it's much better handled. I mean, if we can raise $300,000 for a kegger in 24 hours or whatever, we can help our fellow community members out, and I think we should. And I think Bernie Sanders should stay out of it.
Do you know how many times members of the Wake Up family have suggested that we start a GoFundMe for my student loans?
Aww,
which is very sweet. But guys, come on, I could never do that.
Well, if it's attached to a kegger, then maybe.
Yeah, maybe we could talk then.
Well, okay. Let's.
I caught Randy off guard.
I think you did.
I don't know where to start, because what you're not realizing is that while people like to portray this as an existential threat to most of America, the Kaiser Family Foundation analysis found that 7% of white adults, 8% of Hispanic adults, and 13% of Black Americans reported having unpaid medical bills.
Listener John on the Texter 874-9390 says, how long until they get to my mortgage debt?
There we go.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that this isn't a problem, but
what's the percentage of people that have student loan debt?
Much
lower.
How many times do I have to tell everyone here? Everyone who's in the medical business. If you're in the medical business and you think I'm giving the people that are listening to this radio station a bunch of poppycock, a bunch of horse hockey, as Sherman T. Potter once said, you tell me if I'm wrong. Medical bills do not have to be as expensive as they are, nor does medical insurance. Medical expenses are driven up by lobbyists for insurance companies, lobbyists for pharma, lobbyists for vendors of medical equipment, regulators who over-regulate the medical business. And I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be this way.
But the practices also are like the business model itself is just so bizarre. I mean, I had one of the most bizarre experiences of my life. I needed a routine procedure for one of my kids, right? Mm-hmm. I'm self-pay. I show up and they're like, how much are you going to pay today? And I said, well, how much is it going to cost? How much do I need to pay today? And they said, well, and I said, well, tell me what the cost is. We did this a couple of years ago. We think we know it's this. And they're like, well, we're not really sure. We can't really tell you. And I said, all right. And I said, well,
so it's free?
Yeah. And I said, well, that seems weird because this is happening today no matter what. And they were like, well, what do you feel like paying today? I think I could have said $0, but I felt like I needed to pay something. So I paid something, a couple $100. And they're like, yeah, well, after it's done, we'll send you a bill. And I'm thinking, like, I mean, my husband's in real estate. He rents stuff, right? So what if when you go to rent an apartment, you show up and you're like, I'd really like this apartment. And they're like, how much is it? And they're like, we're not really sure. And then they tell you, how much do you want to pay for this today? And you say, oh, that's fine. And then they say, go ahead and move in. Go ahead and have the procedure done. And at the end of the month, after you've lived there, after you've, reaped the benefits, we'll send you a bill for whatever we feel like.
Red flag.
Thought, yeah. Oh, it was awful. And I mean, I'm not exaggerating here at all.
I don't know who you're talking to. I've never been part of an organization in the last 5 or 10 years. I ran an organization. We could tell you exactly what it's going to get.
I have never.
With the only exception, and being transparent about it, if we get into an operative procedure that we think is an appendectomy and it turns out, it was ruptured and we had to pull out a couple of extra instruments and we had to do this and that. Even then, I tried to do one-size-fits-all pricing. If it's an easy case, we win. If it's a tough case, you win. One-size pricing. Do you realize that if you go, until recently, under Obamacare, you had to, everyone that has an Obamacare compliant policy had to provide colonoscopy for for 50 on, now it's 45, now it's going down. Guess what? They only paid for a screening colonoscopy. So people would come in thinking they had their colonoscopy paid for because of their employer-sponsored, Obamacare-compliant, we're all socialists now insurance. We're all socialists now. That's my new motto. We're all socialists now. And they would, if the surgeon found a little polyp, suddenly it flipped because we code everything like an auto body now. The human experience now is a coding experience. It has very little to do with Medicare. You're just an avenue to the bill. Realize that first, ladies and gentlemen. You're just an avenue to the bill, and a clean bill, and a well-coded bill that goes through all of the scrubbers. And then United Healthcare and Blue Cross can deny the bill. And then armies of people can argue about the bill. But at any rate, you then flip the code until they've changed it. You flip the code to, we found a polyp. Now it's a diagnostic colonoscopy, and people would get a $7,000 bill.
Wow.
That's is BS. Well, and we all knew it, and patients knew it. But the regulators, the wonderful HHS people that you all want to vote for, because all of you red Republicans are actually purple Republicans, look at what happens.
Well, and if we get away from billing and just like regular folks, because I don't know much about medical billing, but like I know for Obamacare, it changed between my first two babies, and in the first one I had to buy my own breast pump. Those things are expensive. They're like $250 or whatever. Yeah. But by the time I think I had my second child, they said, well, Obamacare is giving every woman a free, like you just get a free one.
Yeah.
And they just bill it, or what, I don't know how.
I was right.
A free one.
And, I was right.
And what everyone did was, my first kid, I actually had to carry my pump with me every day from work to home, work to home, work to home. And so the second time around, I'm like, well, if you're giving them out for free, I'll take a second one, so I don't have to take, And so every woman in America, rather, and how many of these people are actually using these things? But if they're free, you're like, well, it's free, I might as well take it. And free, quote unquote, right? It's being paid for by taxpayers, essentially. But I mean, it's just the incentives are completely out of whack.
Or it's being paid for by people who aren't having kids and men who aren't having kids at the workplace, and your employer's paying for it. If y'all love what the government gives you, just keep voting for purple Republicans. That's all you need to do. And vote for really blue Democrats, because they gave you the education system you have. They gave you the healthcare system you have. I mean, pretty soon they're going to own everything, and everything's going to be mandated by the government because they know what's good for you. I'm telling you. And then if you get a little medical debt, Bernie's going to forgive it. And why don't we run up your credit card bill while you're at it? Because I'm pretty sure that'll be Bernie's next. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, it's nice for the short term to get a little bit from the government, but think about the future. Is it good for the kids, for your grandkids, for this republic, which was a free market, limited government experience until 1913 when the income tax came along and the politicians realized they had an endless supply of money to plunder from your productivity and to redistribute for votes. Here's at the end of this article about Bernie Sanders, and you know what Ro Khanna said about forgiving medical debt? Khanna believes that the medical debt cancellation bill could mark one important step in re-energizing, sorry, Hannah, young people ahead of November. If you don't think that our politicians are buying your votes with other people's money, I got some swampland in Florida.
Well, and Randy,
Yes.
What would your advice be? I mean, I think everyone listening right now, or close to everyone, would agree with you that healthcare shouldn't be as expensive as it is.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to be as expensive as it is.
Yep.
But what's your advice for someone who's in a position where they have to have all of these expensive medical procedures? They have all this medical debt. Is there anything they can do?
Negotiate. Those prices are
You can,
typically
first of all,
negotiable.
do all you can to encourage anything but traditional employer-sponsored big insurance company market. Try to do a direct, do whenever you can, like you do everywhere else. Try to go directly to the source of the person providing and say, look, I'm shopping. I need a CT scan. What is your CT scan? If it's, you got to ask questions. Now, the emergency situation is a different one. This is where our immigration policy, all of you blue people who think immigration's so good, you know what's bringing down Steward Healthcare and so many other healthcare systems? Uncompensated immigrant care in the emergency department. By the way, I have taken care of Medicaid patients, and it's not anyone listening to this station, I'm sure, Medicaid patients who didn't want to pay their $2 copay at the hospital-run clinic. And they said, I don't have $2. And they had a big gulp, and they had a pizza from Casey's.
He was about to say a tattoo.
And guess what? They said, I can go to the emergency room and get treatment for my sinus infection without expectation of pay. You tell me there's not something wrong there? But if the emergency doctor says, get out of here, you got a sinus infection. Oh, you have a headache? I could get sued. I got to do a CT scan. I got to do a raft. It's a sinus infection. Do you see? There is so much abuse and corruption in this system by well-meaning politicians who are looking out for you. I'm telling you.
We can go from medical debt, though, over to, it seems like we're maybe picking on, like, poor people here, but...
I'm not picking on poor people. I'm saying no. They don't. People need to have some skin in the game and need to have some personal responsibility.
Oh, I agree. But I'm saying even on the student loan side, and I'll pick on, people who have plenty of means. It's people are still making bad decisions, and I have tons of friends who drive, a luxury vehicle, who go on really luxury vacations, and who haven't paid off their student loans. And Biden's like, we'll pay off your student loans. And these people, they've just made. I would say bad decisions. They might say different decisions, and we just shouldn't be bailing these people out.
And Hannah, you asked a question, and I'm going to do some shameless self-promotion for myself and other doctors who are in a movement trying to go direct to patients.
You should.
For under $300 at my practice and probably other practices around, you can own a doctor or own a practice with 24/7 access for 95% of the stuff most people need for 3 months. 3 months. What does a cell phone bill or your Dish Network or your YouTube subscription cost you? Most places you can get a direct primary care contract for under $100 a month and have access and spend time with a doctor. Instead, you get a
Way 2 days after they were scheduled to put it down, Twins manager Rocco Baldelli has revealed the team is still relying on its famed summer sausage, and he says they intend to give the sausage with its musty package a stay of execution. This is the one they've been waving around the dugout for a month or two now, and every time they wave the sausage around, the Twins seem to get hits. They took it on the tour, flying to Southern California and back to Chicago without refrigerating it. In fact, Ryan Jeffers went on the plane, put it in a Ziploc, stuck it in his cleats, and made it through that way. Now the Twins are being inundated with offers from companies. They receive boxes of summer sausages from team sponsor Sheboygan, squeezable rubber weenies from Oscar Mayer, and a 10-foot-tall flag that says, "Our sausage hits." Now the question they're back to, they have to go to Canada later this week for the series with the Blue Jays, and they're already getting strict warnings from Canadian Customs. They're considering alternatives. They said they may buy a Canadian kielbasa after landing in Toronto. Now the rumors are out that the broadcast crew or the Twins cheerleader dance team may bring it in to the Great White North in a makeup bag. Now you know the rest of that story, and we'll let the wiener out of the bag.
This story just keeps expanding. It's hilarious.
I don't have
if they
anything.
left it in the original wrapper, it would last indefinitely, and it's like, yeah, okay.
I don't have anything clean to say, so I'm just not gonna say anything. Yeah.
You know, we were talking about that when you're at the C-store and you got that urge for either, some spiced meat. Is it going to be jerky? Is it going to be the Slim Jim? Is it going to be the whatever? I like that. I like the sausage sticks that are spicy. But you don't like it that way, right, Hannah?
No.
No, you prefer the traditional?
Yeah, I'm a weenie when it comes to spice.
A weenie when it comes to spicy. Okay. Did you say you had a text to read? Do you have time for the text?
Yeah, quickly. It's from listener Shannon.
Listener Shannon.
You might know her.
Okay. Well, there's lots of Shannons around.
She said, "What did you feed my dad this morning?" He's freaking, all capital letters, worked up. I'll have a nice glass of whiskey ready next time I see him because he needs it. You doing all right this morning, Randall?
I'm doing great.
Are you?
Oh, yeah.
I have too many spicy Slim Jims with his mozzarella sticks.
I got triggered with this Bernie Sanders for giving medical debt. Not because it's in my field. That's help us unpack that is Patrice Onwuka. Why? Because she's the director of the Center for Economic Opportunity at Independent Women's Forum and a great friend of ours. Patrice, welcome into the program this morning.
Good morning. Good to speak with you again.
Hey, so last week, IWF released a press release because, of course, it was, it was an important week as far as National, Small Business Week, I guess. And tell us about what some of the Bidenomics things are doing to really threaten small businesses, particularly for minorities and women.
Well, absolutely. So self-employment, entrepreneurship, these are the bedrocks of our country and our free economy, where you can take your skill set, take your expertise to the marketplace and work for yourself. And we have over 70 million people who have been independent contractors or freelancers or self-employed Americans over the past year. Well, the Biden administration finalized a rule, a new regulation. It's going to make it very difficult to keep that independent contractor status. Folks know either you're an employee of a company or you are self-employed. And so the new regulations redefining who can be self-employed in this country, it's going to be more restrictive. At IWF, we have been fired up since this rule was first floated back in 2022, and we're still fired up fighting back against this rule because we recognize that small businesses, entrepreneurship is the way that so many people can make ends meet because of the high inflation under Biden, or maybe it's because they have family situations, women raising kids, people caring for their aging parents, or they have their own disabilities and health conditions that make it difficult to work in a traditional job. So they work for themselves and they work around their schedules and their priorities. The Biden administration, President Biden, shouldn't be trying to end those opportunities. He should be supporting small businesses and supporting entrepreneurship in this country.
Is there anything that can be done now that the final rule has been released? And by the way, we should mention that that's among some 36 rules that Biden administration has put out, trying to escape a potential Trump override or reversal of those rules, right? So, I mean, this is one among many. What can people do at this point?
Well, at IWN, which is our grassroots organization, they can take action right now. Call their members to let them know that, there is a Congressional Review Act, a bill in Congress that would override this new Department of Labor regulation. It's really important. Congress, a lot of lawmakers recognize that this is going to cut off at the knees entrepreneurs and small businesses, the millions of them. And so Congress has an opportunity to kill this regulation. The window is fast closing, but they have an opportunity to kill it. It's important that Americans make their voices heard. And so at IWnetwork.org, folks can actually, take some action right now and make their voice heard on it. But in addition, this is going to be challenged legally. There are at least four legal suits pending against this regulation. Some plaintiffs include the Chambers of Commerce, truckers associations, independent contractors who are writers. I think there is a widespread concern from every corner of this country that what happened in California when similar restrictions were implemented cannot be nationalized. And we know that in California, self-employment fell over 10% after similar restrictions were imposed. And so imagine that spreading nationwide because of this regulation, whether it's legislatively or whether it's through the courts. This has got to be overturned.
We're talking with Patrice Onwuka, who's with the director of the Center for Economic Opportunity at IWF.org. That's the Independent Women's Forum. You recently wrote about, there's things that I think go on that's why I keep in touch with you at IWF, not only on the economy, but on education. We've talked with so many great people there. But one thing that I think affects a lot of people that are listening and they may not know it, and sort of maybe in contradistinction to what the headline says, you wrote a blog about how the Credit Card Competition Act, that sounds good. Doesn't everyone want more competition? Because competition lowers rates and it's a free market. Okay, whenever it has Dick Durbin behind it, how could that disadvantage small business? It would seem on the face of it that if the goal is to make more competition and therefore less fees, it should be good, right or wrong?
Well, the name sounds good, but a lot of these bills, their names are euphemisms. They sound good, but they have negative unintended consequences for regular folks. And in this case, the Credit Card Competition Act, which is really just it claims to expand the number of processors that can process credit card transactions. But what it does is it prioritizes one type of company over another. And at the end of the day, the reason why there are credit card processing fees every time you swipe your card at a business or a merchant is because it costs money to make those transactions happen. And then it also costs money to reward customers with those wonderful loyalty programs. I think, Randy, I have given my email away to about 50 companies, retailers, to get that 10% discount. Well, and when it comes to credit cards, there are also a lot of loyalty programs that make you, use one credit card over another. Maybe it's airfare miles. Maybe it's, dining points at different restaurants. And so this Credit Card Competition Act, though, is going to end up killing a lot of those rewards programs because, it's going to change the regulatory environment for the credit card companies to be able to process different types of transactions. It'll increase costs. The regulations, unfortunately, will have that unintended consequence of making it more expensive, and the result is you're going to lose those rewards programs.
Ooh, that's not good. That's not good.
I just got a notice. I think it was from my cell phone provider, and I had auto pay set up, and I was getting a reward for having auto pay set up, and they said, we will no longer accept. You will no longer get your auto pay reward if you are putting it on a credit card. You must put in your banking information. I'm like, I'm not giving you my bank account number, but they're taking away the ability to even use a credit card.
Wow.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm not sure if that's a direct result of this bill. It could be, but it's not surprising. Companies, the credit card processors and the credit card companies, they're going to have to find creative ways to deal with the fallout if this bill passes. And so, I believe there's a hearing coming up today related to airlines, as well as some of the sponsors of this bill, who are going to be talking about, the differences in airlines and how this credit card processing company bill is supposed to impact junk fees and swipe fees and all of that stuff. So we're going to be messaging on IWF and our different social media platforms just to break it down very simply what this means for Americans. It means that you're going to lose your rewards programs. And that comes at a bad time, right? Because how many of us use those points, use the rewards that we've collected to pay for, a dinner out or to fund something that, we don't necessarily have in our budgets right now. So this is happening. This is one of the many regulations coming out of the Biden administration.
In regard to the women's business ruling and all that, is there some case law here after the federal judge in Texas ruled against the Minority Business Development Agency and said they were discriminating against white business? Would that factor in the courtroom?
That might not. But when it comes to independent contractors and the definitions of them, there's a lot of case law about it, including a recent ruling in favor of independent contractors that actually halted the Biden administration's their first crack at trying to regulate independent contractors and self-employed folks. So in general, though, there's been a ping pong between administrations where the Obama administration tried to crack down on freelancing and self-employment. The Trump administration said, whoa, no, let's make it easier. Let's make it more clear to understand, what are the very basic, most important criteria to determine if someone is self-employed. And now the Biden administration is trying to restrict it again. So I think it's really important that the courts make a final decision, or for Congress, frankly, to pass legislation that doesn't just override Biden's directive, but also establishes what should be the basic determination of who an independent contractor is. And I think that there has been plenty of case law, plenty of cases established by different federal courts to say, hey, these are basically the criteria to determine if you should be self-employed. And frankly, as a nation of entrepreneurs and small business owners and side hustlers, whatever you want to call yourself, the criteria should be wide. It shouldn't be narrow.
It's all about control, isn't it, ultimately, Patrice? It's all about control. And when they control you, then of course they know more about you. They can tax you more. They can enforce more regulations that stifle your entrepreneurial spirit. And by the way, they can also bring you under the umbrella of an employer. And I don't know the last time you checked, but the last time I checked, the big bucks into the coffers of the campaigns come from the employers, not from individual employees, right?
Absolutely. So control is a key word here. This movement is driven by the unions. President Biden has said he wants to be the most union-friendly president in history. Unions want as many people to be employees, not self-employed, but employees of an employer, because they can then force unionization in that workplace. And then once they force unionization in that workplace, what does it mean? Well, you automatically get money taken out of your check to support the unions, regardless of whether you are a union worker. And then the unions are funneling their money back into probably 98% of the time Democratic politics and candidates. So this is absolutely an effort to control where you work, how you work, and for who you work.
Yep.
And we should, as Americans, we should get to make that choice for ourselves. Some people may want to be employed for the benefits that they receive. Some people want to be self-employed, and some want to do both. Have a side hustle and have a 9-to-5 gig. That's great. But the Biden administration should not be forcing everyone into the same model of work as employees when they don't want to be, and in some cases, they cannot be. Whether you're a survivor and you are dealing with health issues and mental health issues, you can't work in a traditional office, working for yourself makes a lot of sense. You're a retiree or close to retirement, you've lost your job, but you can't get employed for whatever reason. Working for yourself makes a lot of sense. You're a single mom. You just wanted some extra money in between dropping the kids off from school and soccer practice. Self-employment makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think now more than ever, with the siege of independence on so many levels, and of course in this realm, we're talking about economic independence, it is more important than ever for folks listening to this to log on to IWF.org, read why it's important that you need to touch base with your legislators and tell them you want your right to own your own life, for crying out loud. Patrice, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing there at the Center for Economic Opportunity, as well as all the great work going on at Independent Women's Forum. And
thank you so much.
Keep fighting the good fight, and thanks for telling us about it.
Appreciate always being on. Thank you so much for having me today.
All right. You're very welcome, and thank you. Patrice Onwuka, she's doing an awesome job, and they do a great job. For all you ladies out there,
S&P closed basically even. The Dow closed up 0.44%. NASDAQ closed down 0.18%. Leading the gainers was utilities, and the losers was materials. So overall, not a bad day, not a great day on the markets. This morning, we're also seeing mixed results. Everyone is kind of teetering. Let's see, Dow is down almost 0.2%, S&P up 0.05%, NASDAQ 0.09%. Market set to open here very quickly. Now, about a week ago, we got this news, and I found it interesting because I was just at this location in St. Louis, had not been there for years and years. But when's the last time you were at a Dave & Buster's?
We did a rock the vote when talent ran against...
a while ago.
Yeah.
The answer was a long time ago.
Rock the vote. We did that.
Carnahan or something back in that era?
Yeah, against the senator, who's no longer the senator. Anyway, go ahead.
Well,
when Jim Talent ran against, she's a crazy lefty.
Yeah, I think our friends here locally do a really good job. I love Nick Park's place, the Level Up or whatever. I like to take my kids there. It's nice. I would not say the same about the location that I went to for Dave & Buster's in St. Louis.
Womp womp.
It seemed kind of like it felt very casino-y, but like with bad food and none of the fun parts of the casino. Anyway, however, maybe
Claire.
Other people feel the same way that I do, and they're like, we need to get a new business model. And so about a week ago, they announced, we're going to let you bet on our arcade games. And
gateway to gambling there.
I thought that you said that's illegal unless it's in a boat in a moat.
Well, in Missouri. And so they have like 110 locations around the nation.
Not the one over.
And they say you're going to be able to bet on skee ball and Pop-A-Shot. And
boring.
If we're
what is Pop-A-Shot?
If we're going to be friends, I need to know like two things, like what's your Taco Bell order and like what's your arcade game? Because do you have an arcade game? Because skee ball is clearly the best arcade game. It's not boring. Hannah.
What is the one with the wax on the thing and you do the disc?
It's not shuffleboard. It's air hockey. I love air hockey too.
Air hockey's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
So anyway,
it was a pinball guy.
Apparently they partnered with some sort of pinball. John, that's good.
John Pinball Wizard. Get that tune-up.
The new pinball movie is so good, and the Pinball Hall of Fame out in Las Vegas, where you can play like 100 different machines.
Oh my god,
all about it. Anyway,
cool.
Okay, back to Dave & Buster's. They were partnering with an app, like a technology that then you could get on their app and then bet in this app while you're at a Dave & Buster's on these games. And as you might suspect, there are several states that are saying, we think that's probably against the law, and other regulators who are now looking into this. So whether or not it will actually come to fruition, yet to be seen. But I'm serious. There's a pinball movie that came out last year, actually, by the folks. I heard about it from the Reason Magazine folks, and it's really about the government trying, because they used to try to regulate, and in New York they banned pinball.
Pinball?
Yeah, pinball, and like smash the machines and everything. And they get into this, and so the guy learns pinball, and he like goes before the council. And if you need a good watch over the weekend and like
that's cool.
A libertarian / conservative leaning good watch, but it's actually an entertaining film. It's very good.
I know a lot of folks that have in their basement, they have a little, maybe a billiard table, an air hockey table, maybe a pinball machine.
We have a Papa Shot.
Do you?
Yeah.
Wow,
super
that's
fun.
Cool.
Which we had to educate Randall
now, is that
on
something,
what that is.
Do you use an automated, do you click a button and make a little basketball go in, or are you throwing the basketball?
You're throwing the basketball.
Really?
There's 2 of them, and you shoot them together.
Oh, that takes a lot of space. Oh. There's 2 of them?
Yeah, because you're competing
against.
Same
time?
I mean, you don't want to compete against yourself. You want to win.
1v1.
Are you on opposite sides of a court?
No, you're both shooting at the same time.
Oh, at the same time? Okay.
Yes.
Can you
and
block
you can
the
compete with yourself and Papa Shot and
You
have
can.
a ball in each hand.
There you go.
I don't do these things, but I don't ever win these things. If I go to the fair and you throw the ring around the milk bottle, I never, ever, ever have won one of those little fluffy animal reward. Never. So
No, when I go to the bowling alley, I don't let my kids win. I win.
the other one but I think they have it rigged. So it's like elections. They're rigged so you can't win. You drop the quarter or a half $1 in the machine. They have them at restaurants. And then you operate the crane, and you're supposed to pick up something. The claw. Forget about it.
I've never won anything out of
what
one
is
of
this?
those.
They're all rigged against you. They're rigged against you. The system is rigged against you.
I don't remember those. I don't remember those when I was growing up, but I certainly have seen them in recent years. My nephews would play those all the time, and I remember one time the nephew was able to get maybe a stuffed animal, but it seemed like it never worked, or it didn't work properly, or maybe it just seemed like it was too difficult.
Yeah. Hey, on another note, all of you out there who, might be MAGA or semi-MAGA, but,
Can we have a debate real quick?
America First people.
I
what
was
debate?
just thinking this.
It's MAGA. Trump says MAGA. It's not MAGA. It's MAGA.
MAGA.
No, it's
Let's
MAGA.
call the whole thing off.
As soon as Steph said that, I knew exactly.
MAGA.
MAGA.
Make America. You don't say America. You say America. So
Well,
that
Trump
would make
says
it
MAGA.
Well, Trump.
So I love the people
Trump's
who are like,
mostly
I'm a
wrong when he
Trump
speaks.
MAGA.
Randy, you say hammock, so your opinion is not.
And I
hammock.
think it's
It is spelled hammock.
It's kind of like Missouri.
Isn't
And I
it
think the
spelled
folks
hammock?
from St. Louis who think they're better than other people say MAGA. It's not hammock.
It's hammock.
Okay, why it is very much a St. Louis thing.
I'm a
right?
MAGA
the way that
conservative. No, you're not.
The way that they pronounce certain words just to be
listen to
different
this.
from everyone else.
That's true. though.
Well, it depends. Like, there's a street called Charbonnaire, and I will hear in St. Louis, Gravois, Carondelet, and you will hear the news anchors, most of which didn't grow up in St. Louis, on TV. They mispronounce those names
Well, they say
all
La
the time.
Plata. Wouldn't it be La Plata?
It is
La
La
Plata.
La Plata.
But they call it La Plata. But if you go to Spain and say La Plata, they're going to kick you out of Spain.
That's
Good
true.
thing
We're
we
not
don't
in
live in
So like
Spain.
New Madrid.
That's true. But
Nevada.
But let's just settle this now. It's MAGA.
My grandpa was born down in near Bonne Terre. And Mom and Dad had a
Bonnie
little place.
Terry?
Bonnie Terry. We dove the Bonne Terre mines once. Interesting. It's very eerie there. An old lead mine, and there's no life there. They lost a few divers for a while there. They were struggling there. So my wife and I went down diving. I said, "Come on, let's take the plunge." It was eerie. I didn't like it because you're in a lot of caves and covered, and you can't get out. But anyway, we survived, much to your chagrin, Hannah. And
Wow.
But at any rate, so there was when my grandpa on my mom's side was born and raised in that area. He said there were fur traders, French fur traders, the old boys, and he said there was a creek called Joachim. Joachim. How would you pronounce that? Most would say Joachim, right?
Yeah, Joaquin.
No,
Sure.
he said they would call it, those old French fur traders, probably chewing on tobacco, whatever, Schwasham. He called it Schwasham. So that's how we mispronounce things. My dad used to say 44. We're going to go down Highway 44.
Oh, we might have to get to this viral TikTok too, because maybe tomorrow about Schweppes. Have you seen this, Hannah?
Oh, yes.
Well, I wanted to get to this story real quick. Remember when people were
Probably not.
calling people who voted for MAGA, whatever, but red state flyover country voters, good, solid, the people that listen to this show, the people that are on this show. We're called smelly people, Walmart people, all that.
Basket of deplorables.
Deplorables was the term that Hillary Clinton used.
So now comes
she did
this
say that.
Michelle Kosinski, an ex-CNN White House correspondent, and she was at a dinner. She took to social media the other day to talk about how she was haunted by a dinner with several Donald Trump supporters who, at first glance, seemed normal. But they were all well-educated, successful in careers. Can't imagine that thought. And then they seemed great on the surface for like an hour, she writes. But slowly, over a few drinks, they began to slip their true MAGA natures. She was just appalled that there could be MAGA people. One of the couples each attended top Ivy League colleges, the former CNN. But now it was university time for their own kids. They were not letting them send to any of those Ivy schools. So there's this contempt for us. There's a contempt for people who are conservative among the elite media, among those who are in the Northeast and the West Coast. I mean, it's not just we disagree. It is contempt and like, ooh, hold my nose, smelly MAGA people.
Well, I think if you go back years ago, and it would apply today, it certainly applied years ago, the perception was my grandmother was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, and she was always taught that the Republicans are the party of the rich and the wealthy. I mean, that's what they were taught. I heard that many, many times from her growing up, and a lot of Democrats still believe that. In terms of the base, if you look at the base of the Republican Party, the facts are very simple. You look at the rural counties, most of which are very poor. They don't have a whole lot of per capita income. The base of the Republican Party is the working poor in many of these rural counties. It is. Now, they don't go out and promote that, and the Democrats certainly don't say that, but you look at the Boot Heel. That is the poorest area of the state by far. You and I have both been down there, Randy.
Yep.
That was all Democrat. Warren Hearns came from Charleston, Missouri. He was governor, and that is completely flipped. Bonne Terre, when I was growing up, we've had, the young lady, who's the guest co-host we've had from Casey Burns, phenomenal. She really does a great job. She's from Bonne Terre, and she's pointed out that was all union. They were all but they've switched.
And they switched to those were then they became Reagan Democrats.
Well, they did, and I would say certainly in the last 10 years, but Jefferson County as well. But there are people who believe, and I don't know what she's talking about as far as what they said during drinking or whatever, but I don't know the context of it. But again, there is a perception from many that the Republicans are the party of the rich and the wealthy. I've heard that. Yeah. I heard that when Gerald Ford was president.
If you were to ask these people, if you were to put them in some kind of a barbiturate-induced truth serum trance, and you ask these people, what do you think of people that watch Mike Rowe, people that do the kind of jobs that Mike Rowe, talks about and participated in dirty jobs? They would say, when they come in the house, I make sure and lock all the cabinets, I mean, they're contemptuous of regular Americans building and maintaining this country. They are. And I think that is why the Donald Trump Forgotten American movement has been so strong.
And Ted Cruz has tapped into that as well. Yeah. I mean, Ted Cruz really, he's used that term, the Forgotten Americans, but...
and many of our Missouri politicians, too.
Yeah, and there are, to be fair, there are wealthy Republicans. I mean, they're going to be wealthy. They're wealthy independents. I mean, there's no question about that. Ladue, I don't know what it is now. When I was growing up, Ladue was, quite frankly, very rich. I'm sure it still is, and almost all those people were Republicans. But it's, one of the things that I remember in 2016 is the national media really missed the Trump. They didn't see it. They didn't go out into the heartland, into these rural towns and see what was going on. And it's a microcosm of what's happening with rural parts of the country. By the same token, Republicans have been struggling. Stephanie's pointed this out, and it's certainly correct. Republicans have been struggling more in the suburban areas. To the point where right now they can't seem to find a candidate to try to challenge Stephen Weber. So they have their own challenges, but rural Missouri right now very strong on the Republican side.
Saw Tony Lupo the other night at the Vitae dinner. Boy, that was really inspirational. It's really something. And they still don't have a candidate, but
No, I don't. And whoever it is going to face an uphill battle.
Well, and they bring up a really good point in that Stephen Weber has a boatload of money. So if we don't find a candidate to put up against him, he can then dole that money out in the closer races to make a difference. So putting up a candidate against him is really important.
And Stephen Weber, 8 years in the Missouri House. I mean, very well known in the area. And he going to get backed by a lot of union money. Unions have a lot of money, and they support him, and so you're right. If he doesn't have a challenger, he can put that into some other very close races, including the Rizzo seat. I think is going to be interesting, but we'll see what happens. But it is interesting that they are saying that about wealth and that sort of thing.
No, Weber has a lot of veteran support too.
He does. He certainly does, and came in. I remember in 2008. I remember him being he's a little older now. And served in, for lack of a better term, he is a war hero. He is.
Yeah. When we come back, a story out of Cole County concerning some controversy over the assessments down there. And All right. So
he
it sounds
praises
like-
the work of the House and the work of Cody Smith and Lincoln Huff, and said, "Let's go."
You and John were talking about there's stuff. The meetings are going on in the back room.
I mean, I think you're probably going to hear. I mean, do we think that the budget's going to hit the floor and the Freedom Caucus is going to sit down, or the Democrats are going to sit down?
Nope.
Having seen it for the first time, they're supposed to go in at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's optimistic, and I'm glad that a couple people have come to a resolution. Am I optimistic that today will be anything but a disappointment?
Okay. Now, and then I see this, John, about the Cole County Assessor Chris Estes. Got a failing grade from the State Tax Commission for his maintenance plan and sales ratio study. What the heck is that all about?
This is TV 13 reporting this because the county assessors every couple years have to turn into the State Tax Commission because that's the entity that sets all the tax rates. They have to turn in their plan for assessing all the real estate everywhere. And I think in defense of Chris Estes, he has had a pretty rocky relationship with the Cole County commissioners. He and Western District Commissioner Harry Otto have gotten into it repeatedly and all. And Harry saying that this is just one of 8 counties in the state to have its assessment plan not approved and have the assessor's narrative all in the mix of this. So there's no love lost between those entities there. And Chris Estes has gotten in past years very high marks from the tax commission for his assessments and has been reelected by a pretty big margin each time he runs for office.
Why? But if he's been, so what is this? Is it a high bar to get your plan approved?
That I don't know.
We're the only first class county who didn't have our plan approved. I think the article says only 10 counties didn't have their plan approved. So out of 114, no, it seems like we're on the bottom.
What is this about a sales ratio study?
Yeah, this all gets so in the weeds.
So after you do your assessment, then I see retroactively. When sales occur, they look and see whether, I assess...
If it jives with the sale price,
I assess the value in Stephanie's neighborhood of a house, whatever, and it's sold for way less or way more. Okay, I get it. Yeah, that's good. Well,
and they want them to be accurate where it tracks along, not too much on the high side, not too much on the low side, where you can compare. And that's all about assessing tax values because the tool they use to assess what your property taxes are going to be are like homes in your area that are similar in size and age to your property.
So Estes says that according to the KRCG study that his plan not being approved and assessment values not lining up with the commission has a lot to do with uncertainty in the market. We've always been right there where we need to be, said he. This is a quote. Just been with this latest craziness in the market. I don't know any other way to qualify it other than crazy.
Craziness with a capital K.
When you list a house and before the day's over and you got 4 or 5 bids on it, higher and higher, okay. Estes also notes Missouri is a non-disclosed state. Homeowners here do not have to disclose with the county assessor the prices they pay. That creates a big challenge. Well, sounds like pretty legitimate defense, doesn't it?
Yes.
Huh. This is one of those things. Wouldn't you love, when you see these disputes, wouldn't you love to I'd love to sit across the table, have a beer and a hamburger with Chris Estes, and then have a beer and a
turkey
hamburger
burger
with Mr. Otto, and then make an assessment of who's more likely to be right. Wouldn't that be fun?
An assessment.
There could be could be like a sitcom. That could
Nerd
be
alert, Hannah.
That would be
these 2 guys in commission, and Chris has a long history.
Wouldn't
of
that be a
butting heads with the commissioners?
That'd be a great reality story, though. A reality show to just have
about property reassessment, Randy.
No. About personalities and how it turns into public disputes and public policy
That's
disputes.
all of our
reality TV.
That is our show.